When it comes to ambient music, quite a few names will pop up. For example, of course you gotta mention the godfather of ambient music, Brian Eno. Aphex Twin, of course, with Selected Ambient Works 1 and 2, or 85 to 92 and Volume 2, you get it. William Basinski with the Disintegration Loop and his other tape loop based ambient work. Oneohtrix Point Never I've been seeing quite a bit of, and one artist who has been gaining major recognition in the past few years, Leyland James Kirby. Leyland James Kirby is a British musician best known by his stage name, The Caretaker. However, The Caretaker is not his only alias. He also goes by a variety of other names, including VVM, The Stranger, and simply his own name, Leyland Kirby. I mean, look at this list that is on Discogs. That's a lot. Now, for this video, I'm going to be referring to him as James, or by whatever alias is of topic in that section. Also, his discography is expansive to say the least, so there's bound to be a handful of releases that might get missed in this video. Any release that I feel is important but forgot to write a section for, I'm gonna just mention at the end of the video. How about that? Anyways, let's go right back to the beginning. On February 29th, 1996, James, under the name of VVM, released Uplink Data Transmissions. Now, if you're coming to this video thinking it's going to be like Everywhere at the End of Time, you're actually wrong. This album is IDM, more akin to something like Aphex Twin. One of my favorite tracks is Dance of the Spheres. I just love the fast-paced drums with the melody kind of just fluttering in the background. A year later, James released Machine, or as I've also seen it be called, Machine Component. Besides the name, there's a strange inconsistency with the release date of the Machine or Machine Component series, because I've seen it stated as being released in 1997 and also in 1999. Machine Component was a series of 4 7-inch vinyl records that you could mix to create your own industrial noise. It's creative, but bizarre. Okay, it's me in editing. I just thought of why there is a, quote, name inconsistency. So the series is called Machine, and the 4 EPs within it are called the Machine Components. So EP 1 is Machine Component 1, you get it. In March of that year, James was featured in a split with Third Eye Foundation. By the way, highly recommend you listen to Third Eye Foundation. My personal favorite album is You Guys Kill Me. Anyways, if you don't know how a split release works, it's a collab EP or album where 2 or more artists contribute tracks. Basically a mini compilation. James, under the name VVM, contributed 4 tracks, while Third Eye Foundation only contributed 1, though Third Eye Foundation's track is 12 minutes long, so not like he contributed too little. Also within that same year, James released his first self-titled album under the name of The Stranger. A good majority of the album consists of noise music, excluding one track, The Mists Are Rising, which is a more ambient song. James's next release under VVM came in 1999 with the release of Pig. Is it another IDM release? Nope. The first track, Pigs, is the sound of, well, pigs at James's uncle's farm squealing. Critics, I don't know what critics got their hands on this, but there were some. Critics originally thought that this was the sound of pigs being slaughtered, but James quickly proved that it was just the sound of pigs being fed. The second track, called Uncle Ernie, features James talking with his Uncle Ernie about feeding pigs, and near the end, Ernie feeds them. The final track, called Pig, is a distorted and modulated version of the pig squealing clips from earlier. Also, one thing I love about the physical version of this, which was on 7-inch vinyl, the record itself looks like ham. The physical release also included some liner notes that are rather interesting. Just allow me to read it for you as the first track plays in the background. Decaying waste matter, the smell of rotting slop, combined with the acrid and pungent aroma of fresh urine and feces. This recording captures, on hold, the sound of 2,000 screaming pigs in their surroundings at one of the largest UK pig farms. As the connection between human and pig blurs into one hideous being, VVM Pig provides the still creative amongst us with a tool against this ever-emerging mass. The difference between most clubs, pubs, bars, and pigsties is slight, with this emerging creature finding itself surrounded on dance floors with the creatures of similar intelligence, engaging in hog-like behavior of grand proportion. This behavior is not only confined to the area listed above. A quick walk down the street is usually interrupted by one of those hideous creatures wriggling its snout or chasing its tail. This emerging hog-like mass has no purpose other than to be manipulated and taken advantage of. VVM Pig reaches out to this mass of people in a language they can fully understand and easily comprehend. Upon exposure to VVM Pig, members of the mass have spontaneously began to search for scraps, grunt vociferously, fight and bully each other, and on occasion certain crossbreeds and inbreds have begun consuming their own and other species. Please use this record as a tool enabling you to offend the mass. For maximum effect, the following announcement should be made to those about to be exposed. You are all pigs, so here is something you will all understand. VVM wholeheartedly encouraged the playing of this record and the consequences which may arise if you do so. The mass is a pig, and a pig is the emerging mass, VVM. It's an interesting read to say the least. Good lord. Also, on the back cover, it says recorded by pigs, for pigs, because you are all pigs, just reinforcing the liner notes. Also, the front cover contains a little blurb in Latin that says, "Believe every day that the last day has dawned on you. A happy hour will come that is not expected. Don't you see fat and shiny, well-groomed skin when you want to smile? VVM from the flock." Leyland Kirby is an interesting person, to say the least. An interesting fact I learned about this release was that Uncle Ernie, who is featured in this release, ended up developing dementia, so James showed him this release to remind him he had a pig farm. Also, during 1999, James was gearing up to release an album that he had been working on for the past 2 years. That album would end up becoming the debut album of The Caretaker. On September 1st, 1999, James released Selected Memories from the Haunted Ballroom, which was his debut under the Caretaker alias. The album sampled ballroom records from roughly the 1920s to the 1930s. Music wasn't the only thing that was sampled in this project. The album cover and the alternate cover were sampled from these two records. Engagements is tracks 1 through 11, and Interval is tracks 12 through 25. What's strange about the 25th and final track, The Midnight, the Stars, and You, is that it's completely hidden on the physical release. On the track list, you can see the number 25, yet no song is listed next to it. And speaking of the physical CD release, there are several messages strewn about on the sleeve. One quote I want to draw the most attention to is,
"I'm sorry to differ with you, sir, but you are the caretaker. You've always been the caretaker. I should know, sir."
This is a direct quote from the 1980 horror movie The Shining, from which this album and the Caretaker alias gains heavy inspiration. Focusing more on the actual music, one of the things that sets this apart from later Caretaker works is the fact that James retained some of the vocals from the original tracks. For example, here's You and the Night.
You and the night and the music fill me with flaming desire, setting my being completely on fire.
All of the songs are pitch shifted, time stretched, or manipulated in some other way. There are a few tracks that do not follow this formula. The tracks 1000 Memories, Den of Iniquity, and September 1939 are harsh noise. Nothing caught me more off guard than listening to some nice ambient music and then suddenly being met with this. There are also the tracks Request Dance and Disillusioned, which are original pieces that James wrote. As previously mentioned, the album concludes with the song The Midnight, the Stars, and You, which is a version of the ALBosileo song with the same title that is practically drowned in reverb. The original Midnight, Stars, and You is also the exact same song that concluded The Shining. And I'm just gonna say, this is not the last time that a Caretaker project will sample ALBosileo. Within the same month, on September 22nd, 1999, was the release of Arl Awful Waffle, which which by the way is the shortened title. The full title is Arl Awful Waffle 10 Pints of Bitter and Bag of Pork Scratchings. This compilation album featured music by James under both the name of The Caretaker and VVM, along with many other artists under the vvmtest records labels spread across 2 CDs. The turn of the millennium brought many new VVM releases, the main one being Sick Love. The songs that James samples on Sick Love are pop songs, which contrasts with the Caretaker work. All of the songs are about love, and the distortion in the music conveys the message that James is trying to express. Love is temporary. The very same year, he dropped The Green Door. The Green Door follows the exact same formula as Sick Love, sampling a variety of pop songs, such as Michael Jackson's Don't Stop Till You Get Enough. The song in question is titled Please Stop, I Have Enough, which shows that James has always had a sense of humor. I mean, it's very present to this day. The last VVM album to be released in the year 2000 was Masters of the Absurd, which is a full-on noise album. One of the tracks that I find hilarious is Careless Trotter, which samples George Michael's Careless Whisper. All you hear is the loud, distorted noise with the saxophone line from Careless Whisper kinda just echoing in the background. On January 10th, 2001, James released A Stairway to the Stars, the second Caretaker album. Stairway to the Stars is much shorter than Selected Memories from the Haunted Ballroom. It had 11 fewer tracks and ran for 50 minutes. It was also the first Caretaker album to be pressed on vinyl. Another notable aspect is the song names are a lot more melancholic compared to the last album. Also, one of the tracks is named Friends Past Reunited, which is an extended version of, well, Friends Past Reunited from Selected Memories from the Haunted Ballroom, the only difference in the title being a hyphen. This album follows the exact same formula as the previous one, minus the harsh noise tracks and the original compositions. In terms of sound, the tracks are a lot more eerie than the previous albums. Between the next 2 Caretaker albums, James only released a handful of releases under VVM. In 2001, he released Help Aphex Twin. Help Aphex Twin is an EP that remixes several Aphex Twin songs, such as Window Licker, Bucephalus Bouncing Ball, and Flim. And I don't know how he did it, but he managed to make the song Logan Rock Witch, which is from the Richard D. James album, which on its own is already bizarre, even more bizarre. Also, the Window Licker remix, titled When Ducky Quacker, features a moment that is basically a jump scare, and I'm going to give a headphone warning, because it gets loud. One of the only songs sampled on the album that wasn't an Aphex Twin song was If I Were a Rich Man from Fiddler on the Roof, obviously being a play on Aphex Twin's name, Richard. Later that year, James released the sequel, Help Aphex Twin 2.0. On the cover, there's a subtitle that says, Because You Don't Give a Fuck, which is a play on Aphex Twin's album, I Care Because You Do. Also, the album cover is a mix of the Richard D. James album and I Care Because You Do covers. Like the previous release, it samples Aphex Twin songs, this time with the songs Come to Daddy, the Pappy Mix, Come On You Slags, and Aegis Bliss. The very next year, James released Help Aphex Twin 3.0, which was a compilation of Help Aphex Twin 1.0 and 2.0, with 2 new tracks. Also in 2002, James released Sometimes Good Things Happen. There are 2 versions of this released. The sepia version, as it's nicknamed, which takes on more of an ambient sound, while the inverted blue version is harsh noise. The 2 versions of the album have the exact same song names, yet the songs themselves are completely different. With 2003 came the final release of the Help Aphex Twin Quadrilogy. This ultimate release included the previous 3 albums along with new tracks that sampled songs such as 54 Simaru Beats, Zygomatic 17, and Grey Stripe aka Number 16. Now, these 4 albums weren't really a jab towards Aphex Twin. Instead, they were intended to be more of a jab towards Warp Records, the record label that produces Aphex Twin's music. Richard himself has actually heard these songs and actually didn't mind, and has even played VVM's music at his shows, though I could not find any video of it. On July 1st of 2003, James released his next Caretaker album, titled We'll All Go Riding on a Rainbow. This album follows the same formula as the last 2 albums. All the tracks are sampled songs, and this pattern will continue for the rest of the Caretaker discog. Also, the album cover is sampled just like Selected Memories from the Haunted Ballroom. James turns some of these samples into drone tracks. For example, there's Contemplation. Around this time, James released Stigma under VVM. Now, there isn't really an exact release date because the release dates vary, but it's around 2003. Stigma is yet another noise album. One thing I would like to mention is one of the tracks, eclectic is another word for shit, samples Spit It Out by Slipknot. It's the last thing you would expect the same guy that made Everywhere at the End of Time to sample, but then again, this is VVM, not the Caretaker. And by the mid-2000s, James had started looking into memory loss, beginning his fascination with the concept, and thus he began to work on the first Caretaker album to visualize a form of memory loss. On December 3rd, 2005, James released Theoretically Pure Anterograde Amnesia. This album obviously explores amnesia through sound. The Caretaker himself stated, "Even if you listen over and over to all the songs, you still can't remember when these melodies will come in. You have no favorite tracks, it's like a dream you're trying to remember." He also said that he didn't want to create a mood, he wanted to make it hard to remember. To aid in this, there are 72 tracks and all have the same name formula. For example, Song 1 is Memory 1, Song 5 is Memory 5, you get it. They follow a somewhat similar formula to the Haunted Ballroom trilogy, this time sampling 1960s orchestral music instead of the usual 1920s and 30s music. The next year, James did a physical release of Theoretically Pure Anterograde Amnesia. It divided the nearly 4-hour album into 6 CDs. The liner notes of the album were written by a friend of his, Mark Fisher, who later mentioned the album in his book, Ghosts of My Life. The liner notes go as follows, and they are lengthy, by the way. Could it be said that we all now suffer from a form of theoretically pure anterograde amnesia? Oliver Sacks, the man who mistook his wife for a hat, and Christopher Nolan's Memento have made features of the condition, referred to misleadingly as short-term memory loss. Well known, in fact, sufferers do produce new memories, but they are not retained. There is no long-term encoding. This type of amnesia is anterograde, rather than retrograde, because it does not affect any memories formed before the onset of condition. Theoretically, in practice, it is likely that even the old memories will undergo some degradation. The theme of the Caretaker's music was once homesickness for the past. Now it is the impossibility of the present. Selected memories from the Haunted Ballroom was a kind of replicant mnemonic implant, a false memory of the tea room pop of the 1920s and 30s. For those of us haunted by the lambent ache of ALBosilio's croon in The Shining and Pennies from Heaven, that kind of total recall trip was irresistible. The ghosts were so glamorous, their bob haircuts and pearls glistening in the candlelight, their dance moves oh so elegant. Now this paragraph has a few words that I don't really know how to pronounce, so I'm going to kind of do my best. An occulted reference might have been the invention of Morel, an influence upon Last Night and Marienbad, and therefore also upon The Shining. Adolfo Bowie's Caceres's science fictional love song to Louise Brooks. Caceres's imagined a world, we live in it, where the specters of the beautiful and the damned are preserved forever, their little gestures and banal conversations transformed by repetition into holy artifacts. The simulation machine on Morel's Island is film, of course, and who has not at some time wanted to do as Caceres's hero does and pass beyond the screen, so as to finally be able to talk with the ghosts you have for so long mooned over. It is the same temptation that Jack yields to in The Shining when he enters into the consensual hallucination of the Overlook, the gold room in which the Scott Fitzgerald era elite forever cavort in a ceaseless whirl of wit, cocaine, and wealth, is perfectly heavenly. But you know what the price of the ticket to heaven is, don't you, Jack? Don't you? It is that grave damp, mildewed odor which the perfume and the preservative never quite covered up, which has always made the Caretaker's music uneasy rather than easy listening. Queasy listening, actually. It has never been possible to ignore the shadows lurking at the periphery of our audio vision. The trip down memory lane was deliciously intoxicating, but there was a bitter undertaste, a faint horror, something like the dim but insistent awareness of plague and morality that has nagged at the entranced dancers imposed the mask of the Red Death. That's not at all. Something else was wrong. The sepia and the soft focus were photoshopped in. We knew that. These thick carpets and china tea sets weren't really there, and they never were. Not for us. We were in a simulation of another mind's eye. The mottled, honeyed, slurred, and reverberated quality of sound alerted us to the fact that this was not an object itself, but the object as it is for someone else's memory. On theoretically pure Anterograde amnesia, things have worsened immeasurably. It is as if the Overlook simulation has run out of steam, the lights have gone out, the hotel is rotten, a burned out wreck, long since gutted, the band is pale, and very nearly translucent. The threat is no longer the deadly sweet seduction of nostalgia. The problem is not, anymore, the longing to get to the past, but the inability to get out of it. You find yourself in the gray-black drizzle of static, a haze of crackle. Why is it always raining here? Or is that just the sound of the television tuned to a dead channel? Where were we? You suppose that you could be in familiar territory. It's difficult to know if you've heard this before or not. There's not much to go on. Few landmarks. The tracks have numbers, not names. You can listen to them in any order. The point is to get lost. That's easy in this ill-seen, late Beckett landscape. You extemporize stories, they call it confabulation, to make sense of the abstract shapes looming in the smoke and fog. Who is editing the film, and why all the jump cuts? By now, very little, a few haunting refrains lingering at the back of your mind, separates you from the desert of the real. Let's not imagine that this condition afflicts only a few unfortunates. Isn't, in fact, theoretically pure Anterograde amnesia, the postmodern condition par excellence? The present, broken, desolated, is constantly erasing itself, leaving few traces. Things catch your attention for a while, but you do not remember them for very long. But the old memories persist, intact, constantly commemorated. I love 1923. Do we really have more substance than the ghosts we endlessly applaud? The past cannot be forgotten. The present cannot be remembered. Take care. It's a desert out there. This album was the first Caretaker album to be distributed under James's label, History Always Favors the Winners. Previously, his work had been distributed under his other record label, vvmtest Records. This album marked the beginning of what was called the Amnesia Period of the Caretaker. In March of 2006, Additional Amnesiac Memories was released. Additional Amnesiac Memories was recorded in about 4 days from February 19th to the 23rd and acts as a sort of continuation to theoretically pure Anterograde amnesia, with the songs going from Memory 73 to 85. Additional Amnesiac Memories was a part of a collection called VVM365, which was a project where James released a song a day for the entirety of 2006. On some days he even released multiple tracks. And the genres of the songs are all over the place. I mean, literally on the Discogs page, the genres listed are left field, noise, chiptune, abstract, ambient, experimental, acid, disco, rhythmic noise, glitch, techno, new beat, industrial, electro, modern classical, and minimal. In total, James released 606 songs during 2006. 98.2% of them are under the name VVM, 1.6 is under the Caretaker, which is the Additional Amnesiac Memories little collection, and on just one occasion, James went under the name The Colonel. Within those 606 songs, the shortest was released on May 6th and was the fourth song of that day, called Incidental 976, running at 51 seconds. The longest song was released on December 31st and was the third song of that day, called And Finally, running in at 38 minutes and 10 seconds. Okay, I have a quick correction to make. It's actually 603 songs. I know, not that much of a difference, but still, that is a gargantuan amount of tracks. In total, VVM365 amounts to 52 hours, 3 minutes, and 57 seconds. Also, 205 of these songs in the VVM 365 project were a part of the Death of Rave series. Death of Rave is an ambient project where, as James described it, using all the dance floor hits from the time and stripping them of their energy and spirit, turning them into shadows and ghosts. Basically, he turned rave music into ambient music. Obviously, there is no physical release with this. I mean, technically, in 2014, he did re-release the 206 Death of Rave songs, and he split it into 2 albums, Death of Rave Source and Death of Rave Additional, and during this re-release, he selected 8 tracks from the 206 and pressed it onto vinyl and CD. You would think after creating 603 songs in 1 year, I mean, some of them might have been backlog stuff, but still, you would think that would warrant some sort of break, but nope. On April 15th, 2007, the final release in the Amnesia Period released, called Deleted Scenes, Forgotten Dreams. It consists of only 4 tracks, but each of them are 20 minutes long, and the track names take on a similar style to theoretically pure Anterograde Amnesia. What I think is really cool about this release was that it was mastered at a low volume so that when the physical vinyl release was played, it would emphasize the imperfections on the record, which technically made it unique for each listener. Between the album's Deleted Scenes and Forgotten Dreams and the next album, there was a planned release called Desolate Fragments of Thought. Unfortunately, there is no information on this release besides the fact that it was intended to be a limited vinyl release. On April 1st, 2008, Persistent Repetition of Phrases was released. This album featured 3 different covers, one painted by Guy Denning, who had previously painted the Deleted Scenes Forgotten Dreams album cover, and 2 others painted by Ivan Seal. Notably, this was the first time that James used Ivan Steele's works for an album cover, and it wouldn't be the last. Additionally, Persistent Repetition of Phrases marked the first time that James delved into portraying Alzheimer's musically, especially with the track Unmasking Alzheimer's. A little over a week later, James released his first album in over a decade under the name The Stranger, titled Bleak Low. Bleak Low was one of the final releases under vvmtest records. Unlike the previous release under The Stranger, this album takes on a more ambient approach with the occasional percussive track. Roughly a month later, James created Recollected Memories from the Museum of Garden History. It is a 30-minute long track that compiles previously released Caretaker tracks from A Stairway to the Stars to Persistent Repetition of Phrases. On March 19, 2009, James made Recollections from Old London Town, which contains music from The Stranger. This was made for Wire Magazine's radio show. Quick side note, that is my exact birthday. Now, there are 3 publicly available video essays on this channel right now. This is the 3rd, by the way. How in the world do 2 of them have something in them that released on my exact birthday? That's just a crazy coincidence, isn't it? Anyways, 2 months later, on May 9th, 2009, James created yet another compilation called Fact Mix 45, which featured songs from The Caretaker and also his other alias, Leyland Kirby. Around this time, James began to work on the next Caretaker project. James then announced on his website that, quote, "Work has begun on a new release for early 2010, which will shift focus completely towards the brain and brain function, recall, and error." This was also around the time that filmmaker Grant Gee asked him to make the soundtrack for his film Patience After Sebald. For the soundtrack, Grant gave him an 1827 record of Winter Reese by Franz Schubert to sample. On June 1st, 2011, An Empty Bliss Beyond This World came out. The album includes samples of records that James had bought in Brooklyn for around $10. James's description goes as follows. The Caretaker conjures a quieter, more introspective spirit, lost in his own mind amidst a low-lit labyrinth of ever-decaying and antediluvian shellic phrases. Sourced from a mysterious collection of 78s, these vague snippets of archaic sonics reflect the ability of Alzheimer's patients to recall the songs of their past, and with them recollections of places, people, moods, and sensations. James created this album while in Berlin, Germany, using a broken turntable, then transferring the material to a digital recorder he obtained while on vacation in Spain during the 2010 eruptions of this volcano, this one from Iceland. As stated earlier, the album tells a story of an Alzheimer's patient struggling to remember aspects of their life, portrayed through 15 tracks, each under 5 minutes, resulting in a total album length of 45 minutes. This album serves as a good introduction for those interested in exploring his other works, or looking for a shorter alternative to his 6.5-hour album Everywhere at the End of Time. Once again, Ivan Seal provided the album art with a piece called Happy in Spite. The painting depicts an object that appears to be both a boulder or a ball of clay with a pencil or match sticking out of it. The composition is the usual Caretaker formula, incorporating new elements such as vinyl scratches, clicking and popping sounds, tracks becoming more and more delayed as it goes on, fragmented samples, and sounds not even remaining in both stereo channels, repeating samples, and noticeable jump cuts. When the album was released, many said that it was the Caretaker's breakthrough album, considering that it was super successful and the album was received positively. It was so successful that Tiny Mixtapes named it the 4th best album of 2011, and Pitchfork said it was the 14th greatest ambient album of all time. 6 months later, James was interviewed on BBC Radio 6. In this interview, he talked about the recent release of Empty Bliss Beyond This World, and the soon-to-be-released Patience After Sebald soundtrack. What's so special about this interview is at the very end, he played a mix track that was around 26 minutes, which featured a lot of unreleased material. Eventually, on January 23, 2012, Patience After Sebald was released publicly, with an outtakes album called Extra Patience After Sebald releasing a month later. On October 28, 2013, James released Watching Dead Empires Decay under the Stranger alias. The album's cover was drawn by Guy Denning, and James's description of this album goes as follows. It's stark and unsettling, haunted, even troubling, but often just beautiful. In 2014, not much was released by James besides the Bleak Low remastered version and the 3 re-releases of Death of Rafe that I had mentioned earlier, both of which had limited physical releases. When it came to the Caretaker alias, after releasing an Empty Bliss Beyond This World, James initially didn't plan to create more music under the Caretaker. However, due to the overwhelmingly positive reception of An Empty Bliss, he changed his mind. He stated, "So many people liked An Empty Bliss. So I thought to myself, what can I do that is not just an Empty Bliss again?" He started working on his new project from his flat in Krakow, Poland. Unlike An Empty Bliss Beyond This World, for this new project, he sourced all of his samples online. And unlike the Haunted Ballroom trilogy or the Amnesia Period, this project was going to be connected in story and not just theme. And I'm pretty sure we all know what project I am talking about. On September 22nd, 2016, Stage 1 of Everywhere at the End of Time was released. This album represents Stage 2 of dementia, where the patient forgets certain things but can still function normally. James's description goes as follows. Here we experience the first signs of memory loss. This stage is most like a beautiful daydream, the glory of old age and recollection, the last of the great days. The album features tracks that are the most cohesive of the series. There are some noticeable distortions in the songs, such as the sampling of ALBosilio's Heartaches in the first track of the album. The song Heartaches reappears multiple times throughout the 6 albums, each time becoming more distorted. The title of the first track, It's Just a Burning Memory, is derived from a lyric in Heartaches.
Your kiss was such a sacred thing to me. I can't believe it's just a burning memory.
Stage 1 has 12 tracks, adding up to 41 minutes and 18 seconds. Stage 1 once again features art by Ivan Seal. The piece featured is called Beaten Frowns After. The art is somewhat identifiable. It's a form of paper rolled up. With the later stages, the art will get gradually unidentifiable. The series Everywhere at the End of Time transforms the Caretaker alias into a character. There was a misconception for a short amount of time that Leyland Kirby himself had dementia, but he clarified that it was the Caretaker character who has dementia. In an email to Pitchfork, he explained, "I have given the project dementia. It's a fitting epitaph for a finite series of works which has always dealt with memory. There shouldn't be any confusion, and is not intentional if there is any. Upon release on the vvmtest YouTube channel, James posted a full music video for the entire album, which was created by Weirdcore TV. Weirdcore TV has worked with many other artists before and after, including Aphex Twin, Arca, and even Radiohead. Fortunately, this won't be the last time we see Weirdcore TV work with the Caretaker. What's strange about the music video is that Quiet Internal Rebellions was replaced with Long-Term Dusk Glimpses, which didn't come out until stage 3. Unfortunately, on January 13th, 2017, Mark Fisher, a longtime friend and collaborator of James, was found dead of a suicide. James was deeply saddened and began work on a tribute album, which wouldn't be released until December of that year. Stage 2 of Everywhere at the End of Time released on April 6th, 2017. It has a much different mood than the previous album. Gone is the joyful, triumphant music. This album represents stage 3 of dementia, where the individual, along with their family members and friends, recognizes that they have dementia. Along with stage 2 came with a description by James. It goes as follows. The second stage is the self-realization and awareness that something is wrong, with a refusal to accept that. More effort is made to remember, so memories can be more long-form, with a little more deterioration in quality. The overall personal mood is generally lower than the first stage, at a point before confusion starts setting in. The samples used are more degraded. In the track What Does It Matter How My Heart Breaks, you can hear heartaches but in a more lethargic tone. Just like It's Just a Burning Memory, the name of the track comes from the original sample. There are fewer loops within the songs, but the loops themselves are more drawn out. Stage 2 is roughly the same length as the previous one, only being 30 seconds longer. The art of the album is a lot more recognizable, admittedly. It's a flower pot. And just like the previous album, Stage 2 got a full Weirdcore TV music video. Only 5 months later, on September 28th, Stage 3 was released. Throughout Stage 3, samples of An Empty Bliss Beyond This World pop up. And I'm not talking about the samples from An Empty Bliss Beyond This World. No, the songs from An Empty Bliss Beyond This World, like the Caretaker songs, were the ones sampled. Like, it wasn't Goodnight My Beautiful that was sampled, it was Libet's Delay. The description of this album goes as follows. Here we are presented with some of the last coherent memories before confusion fully rolls in, and the gray mists form and fade away. Finest moments have been remembered, the musical flow in spaces is more confused and tangled. As we progress, some singular memories become more disturbed, isolated, broken, and distant. These are the last embers of awareness before we enter the post-awareness stages. In Stage 3 of Everywhere at the End of Time, there are a total of 16 tracks, the most out of the entire series. The second track and Heartbreaks, along with 3 others, feature the last coherent versions of ALBosilio's Heartaches. The track titles are far shorter, with most of them being under 4 words. One of the tracks, Libet Delay, has a similar title to the track in An Empty Bliss Beyond This World, and even samples it. And speaking of An Empty Bliss Beyond This World, one of the tracks is even named An Empty Bliss Beyond This World. The songs in this album are more degraded, samples are nearly unrecognizable, the crackle almost swallows up the melodies, and the songs are warped into oblivion. Bewildered in Each Other's Eyes is definitely creepy, consisting of a singular music box melody. Some theorize that it represents a childhood memory. It helps that it's the second oldest sample in the album, with it dating back to 1910. The oldest sample is found in Eternal Bewildered World, which is from 1899. What I would last like to mention for Stage 3 is the cover art painted by Ivan Seal. It is his 2014 piece, Hag. It could be a flower pot, it could be like vines or something, but obviously the object is damn near unrecognizable. On December 15th, 19th, 2017, James released Take Care, It's a Desert Out There, as a tribute to Mark Fisher. The album was released on the vvmtest YouTube channel, and there was also a limited physical release on CD, with only 1,800 copies given away for free at an event in London, and an additional 350 signed CDs that he sold on Boomcat, with the proceeds going to charity. The release is only one track, but the track itself is 48 minutes and 33 seconds, making it the longest song that James had ever released. April of 2018 brought Stage 4 of Everywhere at the End of Time. The album's description is, Post-awareness stage 4 is where serenity and the ability to recall singular memories gives way to confusions and horror. It's the beginning of an eventual process where all memories begin to become more fluid through entanglements, repetition, and rupture. 3 out of the 4 tracks share the name of Stage 4 Post-Awareness Confusions, with the only deviating track being I1 Stage 4 Temporary Bliss State. This was likely done to make it difficult to distinguish the tracks from one another, mirroring the complexity of the songs themselves. Just imagine taking all the sample techniques that James had used from the past 19 years of The Caretaker, throwing them all together, stirring them up, and just making this. And by the way, the next 3 Caretaker albums, Stage 4 through 6, are roughly 80 minutes each, which is 4 of these 6.5 hours you're dedicating to this album. Turns out, what you hear in the last 3 stages were carefully picked segments of sound from hours upon hours of noise that James had made. I'll just let this interview clip of James speak for itself.
Exactly wrong. It's a layered process, really. It takes actually quite a lot of computing power, you know, to do some of these things, because there might be 10, 15, 20 things happening, especially now, because I'm getting to the later stages of the project, so things are breaking down a lot more in unexpected ways. But always I have to make it sound like it's organic, so it's not being done digitally, you know. So I'm always trying to do something where it doesn't sound, you can't really hear the process, but you can imagine, well, this is crumbling down, something is going wrong. It's just these various processes using every tool and no tools. It's basically, it's all done by ear, and it's right, does this sound good? Or it's always is what will happen if, you know, so a lot of it is trial and error. So an example being, for the latest record I'm about to put out, there may be 250 hours of recordings go into this, and you're trying to look for just the good 40 minutes or 50 minutes, and so it's a lot of work.
If you want to know how intricate the sample work on the last 3 albums are, the sample charts are color-coded and sorted by layers. It took an incredibly long time to find certain samples. Within the post-awareness confusions, there are a few highlights. For example, within the first track, there are several moments where heartaches can be slightly heard, but nearly unrecognizable. And not to mention the moment that every single Everywhere at the End of Time video essay person has to talk about. You know what it is if you're watching this video. I'll just let it play. Okay, a little editor's note, because I remember my first reaction to this part. Now, before then, I had never really listened to it in full. I had listened to like the first 3 stages like on their own, but never dedicated the full 6.5 hours, mainly because I didn't have time to. It's not because I was impatient or anything. It's just because, again, I literally didn't have the time to. But there was one day I did, so I listened to it in full. And when I got to that part, now I had heard of this part before, but never actually heard it. Like, I've heard people talk about it, but never actually heard the audio segment. So when I was scrolling on my phone, I had my phone muted because, again, I wanted to dedicate all of my attention to it. I just needed something to look at instead of just like zoning out. I remember I was scrolling on my phone. That part came up, and I just like dropped my phone. Not to be dramatic or anything, and I like looked up, and I was like, "What the hell was that?" That right there are what some fans call the Hell Sirens. There is speculation that this segment represents a memory of war or some other traumatic event. The album art, titled Guilt's Shoulder, was painted in 2017 and features a somewhat coherent bust of a woman made out of multiple colors, mostly cold colors like blue and green. It's as if the caretaker character is trying their hardest to remember a certain person in their life. Almost half a year later, on September 20th, 2018, Stage 5 was released. Stage 5's description is Post-Awareness Stage 5 Confusions and Horror. More extreme entanglements, repetition, and rupture can give way to calmer moments. The unfamiliar may sound and feel familiar. Time is often spent only in the moment, leading to isolation. The first two track names are Stage 5 Advanced Plaque Entanglements, which follow the same repeated name scheme of Stage 4 and other Caretaker releases in the past. There is a moment within the first track that is labeled as a moment of clarity. Stage 5's album cover may be the most confusing out of all 6 albums. A lot of fans have a really hard time deciphering what this thing could be. The most common one I have heard is that someone with like a big dress like walking down a staircase, which kind of can line up with the Ballroom memories a bit. Also, this is what the art piece is called. I'm not even gonna try to pronounce that. Half a year later, the Caretaker's Swan Song came out. Stage 6 is the final stage of dementia in Everywhere at the End of Time. Stage 6 has by far the most brief description out of all 6, only saying, Post-Awareness Stage 6 is without description. The cover art of Stage 6 is up to interpretation, but it is less abstract than the previous. Some describe it as a blank canvas. The sound of Stage 6 is a lot less garbled. Instead, it is drone ambience. It's a moment of peace after stages 4 and 5. Stage 6 is representative of Stage 7 of dementia. It is practically where the patient becomes a shallow husk of what once was. The patient can't eat, drink, do like anything without help. They struggle to communicate feelings or understand others. They become much more apathetic. And I feel that Stage 6 of Everywhere at the End of Time can perfectly represent that. Place in the World Fades Away is the final track of Everywhere at the End of Time. It continues the drone ambient sound of the album, but then we're 6.5 hours in, and this is the clearest music we have heard in a while. This is representative of terminal lucidity. Terminal lucidity takes place right before the death of a dementia patient. It's an unexpected return to mental clarity. It is as if the dementia has gone away. It lasts from minutes to even days, but nothing good lasts forever, and eventually it all goes away. there's nothing but silence. The character of the caretaker is dead. In the description of the full album of Everywhere at the End of Time, James said, "Thanks for the support through the years. May the ballroom remain eternal. C'est fini." From April to June of 2019, James, along with Ivan Seal, held an art exhibition where they distributed booklets and CD copies of Everywhere and Empty Bliss. Everywhere and Empty Bliss is a compilation album that James had created in March of 2019, releasing the exact same day as Stage 6. Everywhere and Empty Bliss is an outtakes album from Everywhere at the End of Time. Post Everywhere at the End of Time, James still performs under the caretaker. Just no music is released as the character itself is dead. On December 11th, 2023, James announced that his caretaker works are now available on major streaming platforms. He made this decision because people were repeatedly uploading his work and profiting off of it without his permission. Though the caretaker work is officially uploaded, there are some unofficial uploads onto Spotify of his other work, such as VVM and The Stranger. Hopefully someday he does some like mass upload again and just like uploads everything on there, but don't count on it. The man can do whatever he wants with his work, and also it's on YouTube and Bandcamp, so like it's not like it's completely inaccessible. Okay, before the outro actually starts, I want to give a shout out to Electro Walker 86, whose footage I used for the visuals for Everywhere at the End of Time, and I also used it for the Amnesia Period. On YouTube, they make visuals for the Caretaker songs, like they've done Empty Bliss Beyond This World, they've done Everywhere at the End of Time, they even done Selected Memories from the Haunted Ballroom. Like, they've done even Natmos, which is a fan-made like caretaker project, and it's so good, and it's a crime these have like under 500 views. Seriously, it's such good work. I recommend y'all check it out. On screen are all of the Caretaker / Leyland James Kirby albums that I did not mention in this video. They'll just be scrolling up as I do this outro. Boy, wasn't this video in production hell. The original version of this was an essay for an assignment my old music teacher had us do in 8th grade, I believe. Basically, at the beginning of the year, we have till, well, like a certain deadline in like May to write about a concert we went to during the year. And then after a certain deadline, you could write a biography about an artist or something like that. And I had chosen the Caretaker, and I was like, I know I don't have any concerts I'm going to, so I started working like November of 2022, and then once I got done with it, which was 17 pages, once I got done with it, sent it to her, and she was like, "This is a great report, but you wrote over the limit, basically. Like, I only really required 1 page, but then I got a shit ton of extra credit." So, yeah, and also it was hung up. I mean, that's what she did with all the essays, but like, mine was like, just, I mean, it was 17 pages stapled together and then pinned to a wall. It was like barely was on the bulletin board. The Caretaker has definitely contributed to my appreciation of experimental music, considering how early I got into him. It was like right around the time I was really exploring music a lot more. And it was also around the time that like I heard about the fact that my great-grandma had dementia, so it was strangely perfect timing. So I was able to listen to this series that depicted it and kind of, I don't know how to describe it, but like, you know, kind of come to an understanding and research it more. She did pass away back in 2023, and that was around the time that I had like copy and pasted the original school essay version into my personal email. I didn't really fully start working on what the script ended up being until I would say, like, I had some times where I was touching it up in like 2024, and then just recently have been touching it up again until now I've recorded it and all that. So, hey, at least it's out and in front of you right now. And I'm hoping I've gotten this out by May 9th, which is the caretaker's birthday. If not, it should be somewhat near the birthday. It depends on how long it takes me to edit this. So yeah, I don't know how long it's going to be till the next video. It's been about... last one was March 27th. So it's been about a month or so. Or 2 months, basically. So who knows when the next video will come out. Bye.